Now I ask the Minister to sign up. Minister, you have 7 minutes.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and let me join others in thanking Mike Rumbles for bringing today's motion to Parliament and agree that Parliament should acknowledge the number of passengers using Lonscourt Station has indeed exceeded initial estimation. 36,000 trips were estimated, but it's very clear that perhaps 70 or 80%, as the motion says, greater numbers than that are likely to use it. And let me absolutely acknowledge the point that Alison McInnes made, that this would not have happened without the groundwork undertaken by the previous administration, previous transport ministers. I will also say that, of course, we encountered some difficulties which any transport minister of any political view would have encountered in relation to land acquisition and indeed some of the issues associated with bringing into service an old building. But we're there, it's been a success, and I think no one in the place is going to disagree with that. I will say that we saw that taken forward on a cross-party basis. There was strong support for it. There's been funding at all different levels. The car park, the final piece of the jigsaw at Lonscourt, I think opens today or tomorrow, and I'm afraid I can't quite remember, but certainly this week, with support from the Council and S3M. The station itself opened after 42 years of closure in May this year. A very important part of this was, of course, not the consensus among politicians, which in a sense is of no great importance. The real important point was that there was a community campaign for it, and I think that's the important point. And I think we see that at Kintore, similarly, there is a substantial view that it should be taken forward. And indeed, I share Mr Rumble's interest in this issue at Kintore as an MSP and as a member of the North East, for the North East. I'm an enthusiast for rail and a regular user of rail services in the area, and indeed I was just quickly jotting down that the only station as Minister I have not used between Inverness and Aberdeen is Inch. Although that is subject to further review, I might find that I have actually used it. Every other one I have actually used as a Minister, so I'm familiar with the area. And I've indeed made some approximately 750 journeys as Minister on our railway network. When we met with the Community Council and many of the members here, and that's one meeting Mike Rumbles wasn't able to be at. I'm sure there was a good reason, just as there was a very good reason why I couldn't be at the meeting on the 12th of September.
It would have been nice to have been invited, Minister.
Minister?
Well, I believe you were, but that's another story. Your office was communicated with several days before that particular meeting. But of course, what we did instead was we arranged a different date, which was just a few days later, so we were able to do that. But one of the very interesting things that came out of that, and the opinions of the Community Council of Kintore, was they had a very balanced view. They certainly want to improve transport links for Kintore, but they were quite clear that it should only be done if there's a case based on the objective analysis of the passenger numbers justifying it. Because, of course, they had the view, as we all should have, that investment in transport infrastructure is important, but we need to do the analysis and make the right investment. Kintore looks a pretty good option, I have to say, and we are, of course, doing the work, working with Network Rail to make sure that we have a solid case and a clear understanding of the cost. And of course we have to look at two options, because we have a single track piece of railway at Kintore at the moment, and we certainly could, at relatively modest cost, put a platform there to support a single track operation. But we need to make sure that we don't design out of that, if we were to do that, the option to make it a two-track operation at a later date, and that is, part of what we need to consider. Yes.
Johnson.
Would the Minister accept that the strategy which has been so successful at Lonscourt in campaigning and making a business case for a station is the strategy that's most likely to be successful at Kintore, and is also a strategy that in the current spending era of spending restraint is also most likely to be successful at any of the other points along that line where a station may or may not be built in the future?
Minister.
That's a self-evident point that, if there's demonstrated community demand, that gives credibility to estimates as to patronage and builds the case. Looking at the estimating tool, by the way, of course, it's one important thing just to qualify on that. It will, of course, raise estimated patronage levels at all the stations one might be considering throughout Scotland, so it doesn't necessarily change the ranking of any particular station when you come to consider it. But nonetheless, we should have accurate figures. Am I likely to get over 7 minutes, presiding officer?
Yeah, you might. Alison McInnes.
Briefly, if you are looking at reconsidering the way to measure patronage, then surely at the same time there should be a way to factor in local issues and things rather than it being another nationwide system.
So I wasn't seeking to make the point that we were doing something nationwide. I was just making a very general point that if we change the model, it's likely to affect all the estimates everywhere. I'm not posting a recipe for delay by any means. Richard Baker raised the question of funding for AWPR. This is from memory and it might be subject to confirmation, and I will email if I'm wrong, but I believe that answer S3W24477 on the 1st of June to Nico Stephen actually addressed the issue of funding for the AWPR and indicated there's been no change in recent times. Nanette Milne stressed that there should be a station opened at Kintore only if there's demand. I think nobody could possibly disagree with that. I thought Alison McInnes's contribution was extremely helpful, very constructive. She pointed to the structure plan for the Shire and for Aberdeen, which is a very good plan and I think has been produced by a very good process. And I also note that one of the things in that plan is to protect a corridor for the quite long-term view that at some point it might be possible to construct a case for a station at Ellen, a new railway to there. So I think there are things in that plan that are really quite interesting. She said, about happiness. I'm reminded of an old saying, can't remember whose it is, always be happy but never be satisfied, which I think is absolutely on the money for this particular one. The incremental approach, I think Alison McInnes recognised, is one which enables us, as funds are available, to make some progress. I would say in a matter of general concern, we're of course supporting the North East in improving services between Aberdeen and Inverness. We've increased the number of services that run up to Inverurie. We're beginning to see patronage grow. And of course that enhances the case for Kintore by showing that in the general area there is an increased and genuine demand. I hope that we'll see that we have further growth in that area, because that will give us the kind of step change that I want. I do note and encourage the type of cross-party support which underpinned the delivery of the reopened station at Lornskirk. I urge that we do try and find a consensus and not create some false discord, which I think slightly occurred from time to time in this debate, because I think looking at Kintore as the next step is a sensible thing for us to do, making sure we have an objective case, making sure that we can find the funds to do it, and we're continuing to do the work necessary on that.